No people on Earth are more suited to be guardians of the world's largest ocean than those for whom it has been home for generations.
The ocean is the key to life for Pacific Island states and their people. For generations, Pacific Islanders have fished from the ocean to feed their families, sailed across it to discover or visit other islands, and harvested minerals or plants for trade and for healing.
For decades, Pacific leaders have emphasized the importance of ocean resources to the development of their countries and the region. Leaders continue to highlight ocean resources as their priority. This isn't surprising given the significant economic, social, and cultural benefits we derive from the ocean.
But from many corners, the Pacific Ocean is threatened. Immense challenges face the Pacific region, such as climate change, pollution, habitat destruction, exploitation of marine resources, natural and man-induced hazards which can make the use of the ocean's natural assets unsustainable and its ecosystem vulnerable. Each island country has its own national jurisdiction over its nearby waters, the country's exclusive economic zone. But there are vast stretches of ocean which are beyond this zone, over which no one country has control. These areas are beyond national jurisdiction, yet connect and affect the region as a whole. Pacific Island countries face similar financial and capacity constraints.
No single country in the Pacific can by itself protect its own slice of the oceanic environment. The very nature of that environment prescribes regional effort, and to develop the ocean resources sustainably, a regional unity is required.
Pacific Island leaders have a history of working together. Over the years, Pacific leaders have collectively implemented environmental agreements, regional policies, and frameworks for sustainable development to help manage their coastal and ocean areas. The Pacific is a world leader in its regional approaches to integrated ocean management, where the many ocean users are recognized and managed holistically. Pacific leaders have endorsed their approach through a regional ocean policy framework and continue to call for integrated transboundary approaches to management.
Strong management of ocean activities within our sovereign areas must be matched by management of high sea areas if we are to be truly ocean stewards. Our approaches must be consistent and integrated, not just from ridge to reef, but from highlands to high seas.
To take the necessary action, in 2014, the Pacific Ocean Alliance was formed to strengthen coordination and collaboration on regional ocean issues by establishing a network of stakeholders who are truly representative of the diverse range of ocean interests and can collaborate on equal footing to support integrated approaches to ocean management. The first meeting of the Alliance brought together national government agencies, regional and international organizations, private sector and civil society, academic and research organizations, and communities to discuss and share information on ocean issues, particularly the high seas. To ensure each country contributes to the management of the ocean, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, was created as the global framework for ocean and marine matters. But even with this framework, gaps have been found in relation to the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity in the high seas. As the international community prepares to develop a new instrument under UNCLOS to address these gaps, the Pacific Ocean Alliance met to discuss what this might mean for the region.
We also believe that the proposed instrument under UNCLOS will strengthen the implementation of the Convention and contribute to the vision of a healthy, productive, and resilient ocean, which is of critical importance to our region. Thus, with the key meetings beginning next year, we feel we need to start strategizing, working closely with all stakeholders in a coherent manner, and more importantly, asking the key questions if we want to influence and hopefully drive the process. And it is important to ensure that we have an outcome that sufficiently accounts for the Pacific Island region's interests. If the Pacific was to write the first draft, what will we put in it?
So for us, I think what we're trying to do in terms of managing the marine genetic resources and other resources is you're trying to fill in a gap, and it's the gap that you want to manage, and the gap that maybe at this point in time, we don't know, might have some economic consequences and importance to the Pacific Island countries.
Even though UNCLOS does not have a set agreement for biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction, there are some efforts in place to protect the high seas. The 8 Pacific Island countries that are parties to the Nauru Agreement have placed strict conditions on purse seine fishing licenses. These conditions limit fishing activity to national waters, effectively closing high seas to their fishing effort. As UNCLOS continues to work toward addressing biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction, elements have been identified by the UN Working Group that need further consideration. These issues are marine genetic resources, area-based management, environmental impact assessments, capacity building and technology transfer, and governance.
One of the critical issues that came up was the legal status of marine genetic resources of areas beyond national jurisdiction and whether they should be considered as common heritage of mankind or not. This still hasn't been settled, and a number of states have proposed to focus on practical measures for benefit sharing to move away from the legal status issue.
Because of the connected nature of the ocean, the high seas provide many benefits for Pacific people. One of the most highly prized resources in the Pacific is tuna. These migratory fish travel throughout the Pacific. The Alliance delegates heard that nearly 60% of the global tuna supply comes from the Pacific. Even with the separation between national and high seas within the fishery, the impact of fishing on the high seas affects everyone in the Pacific.
This is what we see happening all the time as we view the regional surveillance picture, is that we're seeing a great deal of clustering along the border areas. Now, no one's going to tell me that the fish somehow find the border areas to be more attractive places to aggregate. Okay? The boats are going there because number one is they don't want to go inside the exclusive economic zones in order to pay fees. But also what we do find is that they operate under a level of scrutiny that is more, perhaps less restrictive on the high seas. Because, for example, they're not providing us with a lot of the high seas data that we should be getting, which our boats are providing in zone, but they are not providing to the Western Central Pacific Fisheries Commission on the high seas fishing areas.
Deep sea mining in the Pacific Ocean is a growing industry. Mining companies are partnering with Pacific Island governments and preparing to explore and extract minerals from its seabed. But if this isn't managed and controlled properly from an environmental and financial point of view, it could have a detrimental impact on the ocean's ecosystem and Pacific livelihoods. The meeting also addressed marine life in the Pacific as a major tourist attraction. Tourism is a valuable economic contributor for most Pacific Island countries. Tourists from around the world come to the Pacific to enjoy its beautiful clear waters and marine life. Shark and turtle feeding, dolphin and whale watching, fishing are just some of the popular nature-based attractions, many of which are dependent on high seas habitats. Threatened migratory species such as tuna, turtles, whales and sharks, which feature strongly in Pacific tourism, know no boundaries. Any impact on the high seas affects their habitat. If they are not protected and managed, it could weaken the Pacific's ecosystem as well as its economy. The people of the Pacific also have another connection to the ocean, a cultural connection. Their ancestors were the most highly skilled craftsmen and navigators of their time. They built huge vakas and sailed regularly around the Pacific and populated the islands. They traveled thousands of kilometers across the high seas to reach other islands and still do today. Experts recognize that there is a big gap in scientific knowledge about the high seas. The identification of key ecologically or biologically significant marine areas may provide a basis for further assessment of compatible uses in high seas areas. Identifying the specific environmental values of our high seas will provide a better understanding of the potential impacts different users will have and allow for better planning. Pacific countries have committed to some of the world's largest marine protected areas. These include the Cook Islands Marine Park, Kiribati's Phoenix Island Protected Area, and most recently, Palau's National Marine Sanctuary. Each has significant important lessons that can be drawn from when developing similar regimes for the high seas. The government of Kiribati started the Phoenix Islands Protected Area and set up a trust which is designed to pay for its implementation and management.
The scale of people and remote surveillance comparable to potential ICs pockets closures, I think we've demonstrated that this can be done. And so far we have also achieved some of the CBDI key targets as well as the program of work on island biodiversity. And for us, for the first time, we are able to demonstrate that the designation and implementation, the operation of the PIPA itself is also an implementation of the Kiribati National Biodiversity Strategies and Action Plan at the national level.
The Cook Islands created a marine park whose area covers half of the nation's territory. This park has been zoned for multiple uses, but only if they can be carried out sustainably. This promotes a sustainable development framework which balances economic needs with the conservation of ocean biodiversity. It could serve as an example of how we might balance multiple uses in the high seas.
Okay, so what we're trying to do in the Seabed Minerals Authority in the Cook Islands is strike the right balance between, we're setting a very good, the best possible regulatory framework, and we've enacted the world's first dedicated legislation to seabed minerals activities, and it contains a lot of environmental controls, the involvement of community groups and consultations. We're trying to balance all of these competing interests. We've got to attract foreign investment because that's ultimately what's going to benefit the Cook Islands as we get to sustainable development extraction.
A reoccurring theme at the Alliance meeting was how important scientific research, knowledge, and information are. These form the foundation for effective marine management and conservation. But the majority of Pacific Island countries cannot afford to do this research. Knowledge and research need to be shared freely, and the new UNCLOS agreement should ensure that practical measures are put in place for all countries to benefit. It is every country's right to benefit from healthy, productive, and resilient oceans and the economic opportunities that come with that.
Scientific research and knowledge and information are really the foundations for effective marine management and conservation. And when I talk about knowledge, I'd be really amiss if I didn't actually also mention the very rich traditional knowledge that exists in this region and the importance of that.
Following the Alliance workshop, the next step for Pacific Island countries and international agencies is to strengthen existing partnerships between Pacific Ocean stakeholders to continue the conversation on our high seas, to collaborate and improve on regional ocean policy instruments that are in place, and to take into account the specific vulnerabilities of Pacific Island states. This first Alliance meeting has brought together a range of national, regional, and international stakeholders and people interested in supporting better management of the ocean. It has allowed people from all over the Pacific to not only listen, but to share their challenges, discoveries, and ideas. This has benefited people in different ways. but the overall message was the importance of the high seas to the identity of Pacific people, economies, and ecosystems.
And that's a very strong and powerful gathering to begin, I think, what is a voyage for this region to become a united voice for the better conservation and management of our high seas.
While high sea resources may sit outside their purview for geographical or other reasons, they must not be taken for granted. We have a responsibility as scientists, government representatives, lawyers and experts to ensure the sustainable development, management and conservation of these resources for the future of those who we are ultimately accountable to, those with high hopes for their futures.